All right, well, my camera went out there. I need to figure out what's happening with that because it happened last time I made a video as well. I think it might be because it's not sensing any motion, so I think it shuts off. But anyway, what I was getting at before the camera went out was that most financial advisors and fund managers cannot beat the average stock market return. Over a 5-year period, I believe it's something like 18% beat the average rate of return. And over a 40-year period, I believe it's less than 1%. I believe it's something like 0.6%. Um, and I might be a little bit off about those numbers, but that I'm pretty sure I'm very close, and that does sum up how poorly um, fund managers are actually able to beat the broad stock market index. And along the way too, they're charging fees. So that's one of the basics to long-term investing. If you're investing for something like retirement or some other long-term goal, it's pretty hard to beat the S&P 500 or just the total stock market index. There are plenty of low-cost index funds that track the stock market as a whole. So again, like the S&P 500 would be an index that would be very hard to beat for the majority of by the majority of fund managers. And over the long term, if you're investing over 30, 40 years, and you're starting off in your 20s or 30s, I mean, it's it's almost impossible. Statistically, it's almost 0% of funds and advisors will be able to beat the S&P 500 over that long of a time. So there's that. And also the more complicated an investment is, typically the more it costs. Generally, it does worse than the index because people are doing more things to it. The more actively managed a fund is, generally the worse it performs because people are going in there investing stuff up, and people are not good at picking stocks. It's like there are people that are very highly educated. They go to like Yale and Harvard, and they're CFA, they're chartered financial analysts, and they're PhDs, and they're stock analysts at these very fancy firms. And they have about just as good of a track record of picking winning stocks as, say, most of them, as like a monkey throwing darts at a board and picking random stocks that are on the wall. So there are some very small number of them that have track records like that, but usually the further and further out you monitor their performance, you see that they're not beating the average returns in the market. So very rare, if not impossible, to find someone who has a knack for picking stocks. Someone like Warren Buffett, for example, who does have some skill. But I think even recently, I could be wrong about this, but I believe even recently, the long-term returns dropped below the S&P 500 based on the stock picks. I could be wrong about that, but anyway, even Warren Buffett has recommended that most people would be better off putting their money into the S&P 500. Okay, so anyway, to read books on investing. In another video, I recommended a few books. One is, you can read like Dave Ramsey's book, Everyday Millionaires. You could read The Millionaire Next Door. You can read The Richest Man in Babylon. You can read The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins, which is another great one. There are lots of good ones out there that will give you an entry-level understanding into investing. And honestly, once you know enough, you generally don't need someone else to do your investing for you. So that's the value in educating yourself in investing. You don't have to pay people fees to do it for you, and if you learn and you're investing for the long term, you invest in like the S&P 500 or just like track the broad stock market. If you're investing for the long term, you're going to beat most of them anyway when it comes to returns. So just some very basic things. Obviously, everyone has different financial situations. Not everyone's investing for total growth, but just some interesting facts that you should know, and definitely educate yourself in investing. That's a pillar to wealth you cannot ignore. So I always have trouble reading my notes. So you have to ask yourself what the goal is when it comes to your wealth building, why you're investing every month. Why would you choose to be frugal? Why would you choose to be a minimalist? Why would you choose to live in this, not in the fanciest mansion you can find? Why would you choose not to have a fancy car? Why would you choose to forego having a boat? Why would you choose to forego wearing $200 jeans and $500 shirts? What's the point for that? Of all of that? And the point is, you want financial freedom. So eventually, you want to have the ability to walk away from a job if you want to. You don't have to. You can continue working there, but just knowing that you could walk away from it, and many choose to do that, is nice. That's very nice. So you want to have the ability to walk away from a job. You don't want to pursue things that are more meaningful to you, to start your own business, to start a family, help a kid get through college, whatever the case may be. You don't want to be a slave to other people your entire life. You don't want to have to wake up and dress up and drive to work, sit in traffic so you can go and work for people you don't respect. You want to have freedom eventually, and the only way to do that is to be frugal and to spend less than you earn and to save and invest the difference. And it really doesn't take that long to save up FU money. I mean, if you do it right, you might have FU money in 10 years. Maybe less. I mean, the more frugal you are, the sooner you will have FU money. And we'll talk a little bit more about how much it takes to have FU money or to have enough to be financially free as well. But again, the goal, everyone has their own goals, but at least for me and many other people out there, their goal when it comes to wealth building is financial freedom. And I think everybody kind of shares that as their underlying goal. When it comes to building wealth, everyone wants to have the freedom to do the things that they want to do or they set out to do. Okay, another thing, always consider how your actions, your purchases, your desires, your relationships, always consider how those things impact or will impact your wealth going forward. So again, we talked earlier about not dating or marrying people who are financially irresponsible. You have to think when you meet someone and you're dating, and that person shows no signs of having any sort of financial responsibility, or they don't think about those things. They spend all their excess money on, getting their nails done or getting, their $500 haircuts or driving fancy cars, but they don't save and invest. That's not a very good sign. And what that typically means is that if you did marry them later, and you're working and, it just probably means that they'd spend your excess money. That's what that means. And dating or marrying someone like that is you might, how do I put this? Dating or marrying someone like that takes away your freedom. So you will, if you get intertwined with a person like that, you will always be a slave to other people. And that type of person is someone that will drag you down to their level and keep you there if you're not wise enough to not walk away from that or get engaged in the first place. So do not let financially irresponsible people drag you down to their low levels and keep you there in slavery for the rest of your life, because that's what will happen. On the flip side, once you are financially independent and you have saved enough to not have to work and whatnot, then you have more freedom. Then I guess at that point you really could date whoever you wanted, even if they were financially irresponsible, as long as you chose not to marry them, because you already have financial freedom at that point. But at that point in time, you would have to be careful not to let their and you have to put your foot down. I'm not going to pay for those things for you. But once you have financial freedom, you can date whoever you want. Just don't marry them if they are financially irresponsible. But anyway, be very careful about who you date, who you marry, who you spend your time around, and always consider how your actions, your purchases, and everything will impact your wealth going forward. All right, so you probably have already heard that you should save a percentage of your income. Some people advocate for just saving the amount of your employer matching your 401k. Let me move this camera too, because I think it's motion censored. Okay. So some people advocate for just saving, the amount that your employer will match in your 401k. Some people advocate for 15%. Some people advocate for 20%. The more you save, the quicker you will get to financial freedom. There's also, the higher your savings rate, there are two good things about that. Okay, the first good thing about having a high savings rate, and in the book that J.L. Collins wrote, The Simple Path to Wealth, he recommends saving 50% or more of your wealth. And that is something that's common in the FIRE movement, which is the Financial Independence Retire Early community, where people save, invest, and retire in their late 20s, 30s, and early 40s. So he recommends saving 50% or more of your income. Can everybody do that? No. I mean, if you have a kid and a mortgage and you live in Los Angeles or Orange County, like where I live in Orange County, you can't, unless you're a very high income earner, it's very difficult to save 50% of your income. But then again, if you have the ability to move to a lower cost area of the country, and you're creative about where you live, where you work, you're a minimalist, you can do that. Now, the nice thing about having a high savings rate, 50% for example, is that not only will you become financially independent quicker, but you will learn how to live on less, which is just as important, if not more important than, well, it's just as important. It's the other side of the coin of how much you invest. But once you learn how to live on less, not only will you be able to invest more, but you'll be able to retire earlier because your needs will be less. Now, they say that, I mean, there's a really good study on this. It was done by Trinity University, and they went over the different withdrawal rates from investment portfolios and what's the optimal withdrawal rate in order to so that you will have the most long-term success in retirement. Do you withdraw 1% of your total stock portfolio? Do you withdraw 2%, 5%, 10%? What is it? It depends. It depends on the returns you get during your during the time you're retired and you're drawing from your investment portfolio. But somewhere between 3 and 4% is pretty safe, especially if you're in an all stock portfolio. Now, I'm not going to get too much into the weeds here. It's beyond the scope of this video, but once you can live on 3 to 4%, personally, I would probably opt for 3 because I'm more. I would like to see my portfolio grow, but as much as possible and still be able to cover my costs. But once you can live on 3 to 4% of the value of your portfolio on an ongoing basis, you're pretty much financially free at that point. So, for example, if you have $1 million in stocks, pull out 3% per year, $30,000 per year. If you can do that and live on that, you're pretty much financially free. Because if you're invested in something like the S&P 500, you're pulling out 3% per year. Not only should you expect over the long term that you'll be able to continue taking out 3%, but the value of your portfolio would also rise because the long-term stock market return is somewhere around 10%. If you're pulling out 3%, you still have 7% basically of growth left over, and even with inflation, accounted for that in there, you still have some real growth after that. So that's why they say if you can live, or I'm saying right now, if you can live on 3 to 4% of your investment portfolio, you're financially free. Now, of course, if the stock market went down, took a major dip, then you reevaluate. It may take a little bit less out while it's down. Just like if you had a job and you lost your job, you'd spend less, or you had a big pay cut, you'd spend less. That's a general idea. Okay, so be aggressive with your savings. Okay, so also consider this. So we talked a little bit about how most funds cannot beat the S&P 500. Also consider that nobody can tell you what's going to happen in the future. So if you turn on the financial news, you're always going to see people saying, "Oh, next month, the stock market's going to crash," or a big crash is coming, or the stock market's going to zoom up next year, and on this date it's going to happen. Well, guess what? Nobody can predict the future, and just like people are terrible at picking stocks, and they pretty much can't do it because nobody knows what will happen in the future. They also can't predict what's going to happen in the economy and the stock market in the future. Now, there are some people that make predictions. Oh, the stock market's going to go down soon. Well, okay. If you keep saying that over and over and over again, I mean, eventually you're going to be right. And the ones that do get it right, they end up getting famous, and then people give them money to talk, and so on and so forth. So people are pretty much just doing that for attention and for the hopes that they will be put in the spotlight in a good way, and so that they can get a name and make more money. But they really aren't. They really can't predict the future. So don't think that anybody can. The best thing to do over the long term is just to invest for the long term and ignore all of the noise around you, because their guess is as good as yours and mine. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So along the way, if you're investing over 30, 40 years, the stock market will go down, will go up, will go down and up and down and up and down and up. During that time period, the 30, 40 years that you're investing for your ultimate goal, retirement, whatever it is, don't panic when the stock market goes down. You want to have some cash set aside, right? So that way, if you lose a job or something, you don't have to pull from your investments. It's cash out your stocks. You want that to keep growing. So you want to have that cash safety net to the side, right? So you don't have to dip into things that make you money, such as your stock portfolio. But it will go down over that time period, and it will go back up. But over the long run, it will go up if we can use the past as an indicator of what will happen in the future. And since the stock market has, since the inception of the stock market in the United States, the long-term trend has been up. Yes, we have had recessions. Yes, we have had bubbles. All those things happen. But if you're investing over 30, 40 years, the long-term trend is up. And yes, if something happens, like there's a major war and nukes are dropped, aliens come here, or, civilization collapses, it doesn't matter what's going to happen. It won't matter what's going to happen in the stock market at that point. Your investing has, everything's over at that point anyway. As long as everything stays intact, the long-term trend is up. The reason for that is the economy grows over time, businesses get bigger, so on and so forth. But yeah, so expect ups and downs, don't panic, and when you are in the accumulation phase of your investment years, be happy when the market goes down, because that means that you can buy more shares at cheaper prices, which over the long run will make you even wealthier than before, or had it not gone down. Because again, the long-term trend is up. Okay, so some fun facts that I'm going to end this conversation with. That might give you some context to everything that we've talked about here for today. So again, number one is investing over 20, 30, and 40-year periods in the stock market. If you're investing in, the stock market as an index, I think again like the S&P 500, for example, it's very safe. Again, there have been, if you look at the stock market over almost every 20 to 30 to 40-year period, it's up. All right. It's very safe if you're investing for the long term. Just take a look at for yourself. Go to any point, pull up a graph of the S&P 500 since its inception. Go to any point there and look at any point, and then look at where it was 20 years later. You will see that the long-term trend is up. Then look at 30 years and 40 years, it's up. That's the long-term trend from almost every single point. So take a look at that, and that should give you some reassurance. I'll also give you some examples here of compound interest. So if you're, for example, if you're 18, 19, 20 watching this, or if you're a parent watching this, or a grandparent watching this, definitely send this to someone in your family who's in their late teens, early 20s, even in their early 30s. Okay, so $500 invested monthly at 9%, at a 9% annual average rate of return is worth just over $2 million in 40 years. Okay, so that's $500 invested monthly at a 9% annual average rate of return below the long-term annual average stock market return is worth just over $2 million in 40 years. So as an example, if you started at 25, investing $500 per month, assuming these numbers, at 65, that individual would have over $2 million saved. Assuming everything else here stays the same, 500 invested monthly, 9% annual average rate of return, 40 years, but instead of investing 500, they invested 1,000, that stock portfolio would be worth just over $4 million. Okay? So over 40 years. Now, $500 might sound like a lot to you right now, but as your career grows, you'll end up probably investing more than $500 per month, especially as dividends start hitting your brokerage account. You reinvest those. So that just shows you right there that meaningful wealth can be built if you're patient and you take a long-term approach. You look for low-cost index funds that track the broad stock market. For example, like the S&P 500. Something to look at. Yeah, so those are some pillars to wealth building. I'm basing this off of my experience as a financial planner, as an MBA. I've read lots of books. The most recent book that I read was J.L. Collins' book, The Simple Path to Wealth, which inspired me to make this video. I mean, the stuff in there, I knew that stuff already because I've been reading and studying and whatnot in this field for a long time. But he really, in that book, he really put it together nicely, and it's a book that anybody can read and understand. And I really recommend, if you want to learn more and take the next step in your investment journey, read J.L. Collins' book, The Simple Path to Wealth. It's an amazing book, and there's a lot more knowledge. It goes a lot more in depth in this video. But anyway, hopefully this was helpful. If you like what you're seeing here, like and subscribe. And happy Super Bowl Sunday. Today is Super Bowl Sunday. Actually just started 5 minutes ago. Shows you what a sports fan I am. But anyway, thank you for tuning in and have a good day. Bye.